Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome to our expert panel, From AI to ROI, a data executive's guide to impactful enterprise use cases, brought to you by our friends at Snowflake, at Scale, Denodo, Fivetran, and Revify. I'm Brian Mink, co-founder and president of Data Science Connect, the world's largest data and AI ecosystem for enterprise leaders. Today, we're excited to welcome hundreds of attendees from around the world to explore a challenge that's top of mind for every data executive right now: cutting through the AI noise to focus on what actually delivers value. With AI dominating headlines and internal roadmaps alike, the pressure is on to move fast. But without clear use cases and real alignment with business priorities, it's easy to end up chasing hype instead of impact. In today's session, we'll take a practical look at how to identify the right AI opportunities, integrate them into your enterprise systems, and navigate common roadblocks like scalability, cross-functional alignment, and stakeholder buy-in. You'll hear proven strategies and real-world examples that show what successful AI implementation really looks like, beyond the buzzwords. We're honored to hear from a distinguished panel of experts today. Dave Mariani, CTO and founder at Scale; Nikolai Scholz, Senior Product Manager at Snowflake; Kevin Bohan, Director of Product Marketing at Denodo; Shiva Mogili, Director of Product Management at Fivetran; and Girish Bhatt, SVP at Revify. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. To make this feel a little more in person, we suggest you add a photo to your profile and include your bio, LinkedIn profile, and other information you want your fellow attendees to see. Next, please take advantage of the Q&A and chat features in the right sidebar. We'll be addressing your questions throughout the webinar, so be sure to upvote the questions you'd like the panel to address. If you're wondering where your organization stands compared to others on your AI journey, check out the poll questions in the right sidebar. And finally, to learn more about how to deliver impactful AI use cases that deliver ROI, check out the calls to action throughout the webinar from our sponsors. Now, without further ado, excited to welcome our panelists to the stage. Welcome, everyone. So we'll start off with some quick intros. If each of you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your organizations, and your current role. So we'll start in the order you appear on my screen. And so, Dave, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, thanks, Brian. So my name is Dave Mariani. I'm the CTO and co-founder of AtScale. And AtScale, I run product for AtScale, and what we do is we've created a universal semantic layer, and semantic layers are really critical right now for providing context for Gen AI. So highly relevant topic. So thanks for the invitation, Brian.
Excellent. Welcome, Dave. Girish.
Hey, Brian, and everyone who's participating live or watching this on demand later on. I'm Girish Bhatt from Revify. At Revify, we offer AI agents for data cost management, data operations, and data quality. We have a single platform that's being used by customers at AMD, Verisk, Stanley Black & Decker, Ocean Spray, among others. And they're mainly shifting from manual siloed data management to more of a unified self-driving approach that helps them realize positive ROI from their data investments with AI as well as without AI. I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation with my fellow panelists.
Excellent. Welcome, Girish. Kevin?
Thanks, Dave, and thanks everyone for joining today. So my name's Kevin Bohan, Director of Product Marketing at Denodo. As Director of Product Marketing, I do a number of things. The main part that I enjoy most about the role is really helping customers understand how they can get the value from their data investments, especially those that are modernized and are using new data warehouses, data lakehouses. If you're not familiar with Denodo, what we do is we extend those modern platforms with a logical data management layer that sits atop those platforms as well as all of your other data sources. And we unify the data access across those sources. We also empower data self-service, governed data self-service that allows users to come and find the information they're looking for. We enforce federated governance, so the people who are most familiar with the data can classify the information. But you can then set global policies to say all PII information is governed in this way and that. And then the final aspect of what we do is we optimize the access for real time. With AI, being able to access data regardless of where it resides in real time is critical to support many of the use cases, especially operational type use cases that people are looking to implement. So together, Denodo and your other data implementations provide that foundation to empower your analytics, your AI initiatives, as well as business innovation.
Great. Welcome, Kevin. Shiva.
Yes. Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name is Shiva. I lead the product team here at Fivetran for our integrations and the extensibility platform that we offer. If you're not familiar, Fivetran is a data integration platform. We help integrate data from over 700 different sources, as well as custom sources, into data lakes, data warehouses, or whatever your data destination is. And our mission is to make data access as easy as electricity. And we believe we are well on our way to that mission. And we also believe Fivetran is what we do at Fivetran is the foundation for many of the AI initiatives that our customers are experimenting with. Happy to be here and excited to hear what questions you have for us.
Great. Welcome, Shiva. Nikolai.
Hey, folks. How's it going? Great to be here. My name is Nikolai Scholz. I am a product manager here at Snowflake. I am responsible specifically for document AI and unstructured data processing throughout a series of different products that we have here at Snowflake. Snowflake itself, of course, is a data cloud, and our focus right now with AI is to help organizations bring their data strategy together with their AI deployment securely and at scale for their particular use cases. And of course, all of that is enabled by a series of different features. And yeah, happy to be here, happy to share all the learnings that we have from that application.
Excellent. Welcome to all of you. So the first question I want to talk about is how executives can move beyond the hype that we've seen the last couple of years around AI and start distinguishing between genuine opportunities versus some of those overhyped trends. Certainly there is much hype in the market, but there is also much real value to be had. So how do executives distinguish between those when determining which use cases to prioritize, which vendors to use? How do you make that determination? We'll start in reverse order this time. So Nikolai, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, absolutely. It's a very common question that we get whenever we speak to customers. Hype is really the easy trap to fall into simply because mostly everyone around you is talking about it. The general recommendation for distinguishing what is hype and what is not is to identify the true business problem that you're trying to solve. There's a particular reason that why maybe somebody brought up a particular solution, a particular issue that they want to solve. So doubling down, understanding, and putting the problem into some sort of understanding of what exactly the value is that it brings would help you understand whether or not what you're solving and what you're trying to solve is being solved through some sort of hype or through a particular needed and applicable application.
Shiva, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I do second that. I think with generative AI initiatives, I'd like to take the same approach that we take with building products. It's always to start with the problem instead of the technology, right? I think what's different here is the technology that we have today with AI is able to solve a lot of problems that were previously not solvable, right? But at the same time, you cannot lose track or focus on the problem that you're trying to solve and not get carried away with the technology where it is at. I think as long as you're centered on the problem that you're solving and then applying the technology to solve that problem, you can really cut through a lot of the hype and then focus on the real problem that needs to be addressed.
Kevin?
I agree with everything that was said around, starting with the business problem, validating the scope and the how you would deliver on that execution or that plan. But also, I think there's a few more aspects that are important. One is evaluate the fit and scalability from a technical perspective. So do we have access to the information that will be necessary? Do we have the infrastructure in place that would be necessary to support that use case? And this is certainly something that I think most people look at. But I think the area where sometimes it's overlooked and it might lead to some of the missteps or those pilots that don't successfully move forward into production is assessing the organization's readiness and also the adoption potential. And what I mean by that is, I think everybody, and the reason there's so much hype is a lot of what could be done with generative AI or AI in general is transformational. But because it's transformational, it's also going to be disruptive internally to the people and the processes. So what you have to do is understand, because you probably have many potential projects you could start working on, which one of those are going to be more able to be fit into the culture of the organization, which ones of those are going to be more likely to be adopted by the user base. And that's going to be critical to having success. If you're able to roll something out, but then it's so different than how people are used to operating with inside of their roles that it isn't going to be adopted, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to deliver on that value. So I think an important part is that whole assessment of the readiness to the organization to accept this new way of doing things, and also will it be adopted by the end users?
Absolutely. Adoption and transformation, key themes. Girish?
Yeah, building on my the views shared by my fellow panelists, I would say start with the use cases. If the use cases are not clear and it cannot be tied to a measurable business outcome, it's probably hype. And the way in which we look at things is, if there's something that's boring, manual, that's can be done faster, you can automate it. You frankly don't need AI for that. However, with AI, there is a promise of doing things in a much better way. And we look at things primarily from the opportunity lenses. Is it a complex process? Can we collapse the levels of complexity? There may be multiple levels of hierarchy. And if I put my data management hat on, I would say, okay, can I reduce the cost? Is there an opportunity to enhance the data quality, to optimize the underlying performance of the data ecosystem and provide actionable insights? These are all rooted in pain points, not on hype. And automation will take you to a certain extent. And I think AI, particularly Gen AI, can augment what has been already achieved and take it to the next level.
Great points, Dave.
I guess the litmus test for me would be to ask the question, if AI wasn't in the name of the project, would I do it? Because I think what got these boards of directors has put so much pressure on technology leaders to sort of show some evidence that their organization is actually doing AI and sort of meeting the expectations that the industry is putting on these companies to deploy AI so quickly. And I think that it's just like everybody said in this panel, is that you got to have a use case first. You got to have a business problem that you're looking to solve, and you got to choose the best tool for the job. And maybe AI is not the best tool for the job. Maybe it's a force fit just to be able to show that we're making some kind of progress. So there's a lot of other things that need to happen before you can sort of just attach AI to a problem. I think Kevin mentioned that your infrastructure needs to be there, your data needs to be in shape, your organization needs to be receptive and ready to sort of take on sort of this new sort of capability. And it's always best tool for the job, and not every job is going to be AI is going to be the perfect fit for. So I guess that's where I would start.
Yeah, excellent points all around. And I think tees up nicely into our next question, which is, as executives in these organizations are making decisions about which projects to pursue, which investments to make, what kinds of frameworks or criteria can they use to do that in a more uniform way across the organization, so there's some consistency, some predictability about when it makes sense to move forward with particular initiatives over others. What are the frameworks and criteria for making those determinations? Kevin, you want to kick us off there?
Sure. So what we do is we work with the customers and early on define what those business outcomes we're looking to achieve. We refer to this as our success blueprint, but it's defining the clear, measurable business outcomes. It's aligning the enterprise strategy with the AI goals of the particular project. A key part is to get buy-in from the stakeholders early on. And then there's other parts that we already touched upon as far as, assessing the technical and organizational readiness, the establishing baseline metrics. How long does it take currently? What's the cost? Resource levels involved to be able to deliver on some of these current processes. This way, at the end of it, you're able to show what that value is. We also, as part of it, establish a value dashboard that will clearly identify what those measurable outcomes we set from the beginning. So as we work through this, we can look and see what is the measurable results that we're actually delivering on. The other thing that's part of that whole blueprint is not just the specific goal that we're looking to achieve in that first project, but what we do is identify multiple projects, because when you get to the end of the first deliverable, what you want to be able to do is capitalize on the momentum you have. So if you can show that the first win translates into measurable results, you can capitalize on that, share those results, and have business executive review, but leverage that success into going after the next project. And again, you learn, iterate, and as you get to the second, third, fourth one, it starts becoming more of a repeatable process that you can deliver that business value focused on specific measurable outcomes for each of the projects.
Great points. Girish?
Sure. I just piggybacking on what was mentioned. To frame the conversation here, I think there is a lot of skepticism from enterprise buyers and leaders about is this ready for prime time, even though every vendor is likely to say yes. If I take a step back and say what's our viewpoint on this, it's really about, we talked about the use cases, but are the use cases related to a customer pain point, and does it require AI? That's a fundamental framing. And I also like to look at this is it solvable? Is it solvable and achievable with the skills that you have on the team, or do you need to go acquire retrain and acquire the skills or the tools for that? And since we are all about data practitioners here, do you have the right data foundation and reliable data to support it? And end of the day, it's not about, well, I use so many fewer tokens. It's more about how am I impacting the overall outcome in a positive way? Is it increasing a performance and a revenue metric, or is it doing things in a faster way, okay, reducing perhaps the cost on this? So if the answer is not yet any of those, I think the use case is not quite AI ready from my perspective, and it's not worth pursuing.
Great points, Dave.
Yeah, I guess there's the Girish hit on one of the sort of really important things is, do we have the data? So I guess I would start with sort of three questions. Number one, does it solve a real business problem? Number two, do we have the data, and is the data in the shape and at the quality that we can rely on? And then the third question would be, can we scale it? And I have to start with this, like you got to start with a strong data foundation. And obviously, being in the semantic layer business, it's, for business intelligence, the semantic layer has been really important to be able to deliver consistency and reliability across different use cases. And I think in the era of Gen AI, that really needs business context. I don't know how you provide that business context without a really strong data foundation that is able to translate technical data into business jargon that makes sense. Otherwise, if AI can only do as good as what the data that supports it allows it to do. So I guess I would start there, Brian. It's like those, answer those three questions. With the biggest question is like Girish mentioned, is the data in the shape where we can actually be successful with this use case?
Yeah, great points and criteria there, Nikolai.
Yeah, wonderful points. For sure, I agree with all of those. I would highlight as well. I think it's very important to empathize with the decision maker in this particular case to understand the motivation of the worth pursuing. So, what's the value that this brings can take many different shapes. So, understanding what that means. Some use cases are incremental value. Some of them are value that you're optimizing, that you're already delivering today, but you want to do it even faster. So trying to understand that and the urgency behind what needs to be done is very important, because if the trade-off is there and the value is large enough, you'll get the data to the shape that you want, because it is that important. And in some ways, I would say you're putting on that product manager hat, because you're doing a bunch of trade-offs. You could be building this, you could be building this, and putting that all side by side, understanding the motivation. Are you trying to prove ROI to your CFO, or are you trying to go after the next big thing in your business line so that you can offer new value to your customer? So having that sort of hat of the trade-off, putting the facts down on paper, and then getting to the brass tacks of which use case is furthest along if I started today, and what is the most urgent thing for my business.
Great points. Shiva?
Yeah, I really like, Dave, your point around how important data foundation is to any AI initiative, which I think is like really key. And getting the data, access to data, is sometimes a lot harder than it looks. So I completely agree with those points. One thing I also want to add here is I think it's important to also think about what approach you want to take to the use case that you're pursuing, right? Do you want to like go big bang, make it a massive transformation project, versus do you want to start small and then incrementally build on top of it? I think if you're taking like the first approach of doing this massive transformation, that's where you want to spend a lot more time assessing the use case, the business impact, and so on. What I like more is taking a more experimental approach where you don't have all the data available right away. You might have some of it. You might know some things about what impact it could have, but there's a lot of risk involved. So that's where I would recommend taking more of like an experimental approach, where you start small, you assess the impact, you see like the benefits that are coming in, like that make business impact, and then building on top of it, right? Or you do like that small POC, and then you realize actually this is not actually useful. Our stakeholders are not finding value in this, and then you might decide to like pivot or change direction. I think you want to like make sure if you take the first approach and want to do this big transformation, that's where in those cases you definitely want to spend a lot of time upfront, like doing detailed analysis on the business impact you can expect if it's successful or not, the resources that you need to invest in, like people, process, and technology to make that successful.
Yeah, excellent points. And we've got a couple of great questions in the chat that I'll just open the floor to. So the first one here is from Ramakrishna, CDO at iSteer. And this is a great question, I think, from the CDO perspective that really encapsulates what a lot of executives are feeling right now. And he says, most of the organizations are not ready with a use case, but there is pressure to implement AI. How do you see it? And I think what that gets to is you guys have outlined some great criteria for when it maybe doesn't make sense to implement particular use cases, or maybe it makes sense to implement it, but using something other than AI, automation, for instance. And nevertheless, CDOs at a lot of companies are getting pressure from their CEOs and boards of directors to do something on AI, to show some kind of ROI with respect to AI, especially where significant investments have already been made. So how can CDOs in particular balance that pressure and try to show some progress, even when maybe they themselves are having some hesitation that certain use cases may not be the best fit for AI, or that's not really where they want to spend their political or monetary capital right now with the particular use case, but they've got to show something. How do you balance those challenges?
I could take a stab at that. So what I see our customers doing is defaulting to a natural language query use case. And the reason why they do that is that if they've already have, and these are our customers, right? They already have a semantic layer that they're using for business intelligence. So they've already gone through the mental process of saying, hey, you know what? My business users are using Tableau and Power BI and Excel, and they trust the data. It's been vetted. There's a semantic model behind it that is making sure the guardrails are there so that people are only getting access to the data they're supposed to. So it's already been proven in a business intelligence sort of use case. And so a nice logical next step would say, okay, can we put a chat bot in front of it, in front of that semantic layer, so now they can ask a question, not with point and click and drag and drop, but with with just an English question, and is that and that's, there's lots of value there, and I've seen customers, for example, what I did when I first got access to this through Claude or through ChatGPT connected to my semantic layer to AtScale. What I would do is I would act like I would say, show me sales by product for Canada for 2002. Basically, I would ask a question very much like I would build an analytical dashboard or an ad hoc query in Tableau. And what was so surprising to me was I saw people say, you know what, it's like they wouldn't do that at all. They would just say, show me insights on sales. And then the LLM would then go and run all the queries, like 10 different queries, and then show them something that they never knew before. And I think that's really exciting to me. And I think that the customers who have dipped their toe in there have seen that when you pair an LLM with some structured data that has that guardrails, the LLM can do a lot of that analysis that a human could do, but would take a very long time to do. So at least in our customer base, I see that that's a logical next step where they can dip their toe into the Gen AI pool without having the fear of unleashing a beast upon the organization that's out of control and is returning results that nobody trusts.
Yeah, so I really liked what Dave said. I think if we focus on Gen AI, particularly from LLM perspective, the interactivity and natural language interfaces are naturally lead to experimentation. You can query whatever insights, whichever product you're using, doesn't matter, Snowflake, Denodo, Fivetran, Revify. You can query and interact and get insights in a much faster way than it was ever possible. That is one. And if I were to give an example of a customer of ours, I'll go on record, Verisk. They have hundreds of warehouses. When they started with AI, they started experimenting, to Dave's point, right? So they started saying, okay, let me look at what are the performance, what are the spend challenges, what are the quality challenges with few key warehouses, and they started experimenting with that. And they think of them as pilots, and they got comfortable before they started doing it. And they didn't start with AI. They started going back to what the panel previously discussed. These are the warehouses where I have the acute pain point, whatever those pain points are. And let me break it into tasks such as, are there too many, what are the slowest queries? What are the long running queries? And these take time, right? We all data practitioners know that with natural language interface and thanks to modern tools, as well as now Gen AI, you can get insights much faster. That's what I would encourage people to do. Pick wherever you have the acute pain points and break it down into manageable chunks. And with AI, I think you can get to an outcome in the longer term much faster, perhaps even in the shorter term.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both of those points. The other thing I would also do is like talk internally to like different champions that you have in the organization, right? There's like various use cases across. Like there's use cases for product managers, there's use cases for support teams, marketing teams. If you like start talking to like various different business stakeholders you have in the company on ideas and thoughts they have, and then use like some of the frameworks that we were discussing earlier to like rate and rank those different use cases and see which ones your organization is ready for. That gives, I think, puts you in like a better position to identify what you want to pursue.
Yeah, just on top of that, yeah, I wouldn't recommend to pursue AI for the sake of just pursuing AI because you're under pressure. I think it's very important to understand what you're trying to solve, but at the same time, enable your folks to use it. I don't think it's controversial to say that everybody in the organization can benefit in their effectiveness and efficiency when they apply AI in their daily jobs. Just even taking care of very repetitive tasks on a daily basis. And so enabling those folks to use it can also bring some great ideas about which you can then utilize and scale to the full enterprise. So from one side, it's bottoms up, and from the other side, speaking to your stakeholders, how Shiva said, to identify what are those bigger chunks of inefficiencies that you can solve top down.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said there. I think early on, when people are first looking at it, it's really around how do you democratize the data? How do you give access to more people? And a way that I've seen a number of customers really find what those use cases might be best to solve. Most data teams are backlogged. People make requests to get access to data, and it takes a while for those requests to be satisfied. That's a source where you can start and say, okay, this team seems to make requests often, and it takes us 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get to them. What if we empowered them to be able to do these things on their own? It frees up the data team, and that's a win for the data team. But now those groups are getting access to the information by just using natural language. They don't have to know SQL or any of the other technical aspects to get access to the information. And that's where you see those early wins. And then it starts evolving into more defined specific use cases and things like that. And that's probably where more of the measurable value will come from on those, operational use cases. But if you're looking at where to get started, I think the value really comes is how do you get that information into the hands, empower those users, that's going to then free the data teams to then work on more strategic initiatives around whether it's AI or other initiatives they have on their plate.
Yeah, great points. We have another great question in the chat I want to get to as well. This one is from Michael Lee, Director of BI at CRISP in Atlanta. So he asks, when do leaders leverage or when do leaders take into consideration the platforms they currently have that also provide AI solutions and capabilities versus custom building AI solutions to support business motivation behind AI adoption? So classic sort of build versus buy question, but I think there are some unique wrinkles in the context of AI and ROI. One of which being, if you're doing a lot of what we've talked about, which is starting with the business value and the use case, and then finding the appropriate technology, you may not have that technology already in your tech stack if you're truly starting with the business case and that particular use case. So it's sort of, I think there is a challenge when you're thinking about build versus buy here of, are we just taking what we already have and trying to fit a use case for what we already have versus starting with the use case and the business value and then finding the appropriate solution for that. In many cases, you could in theory build a custom solution that would do exactly what you want to do, but that might be more expense, more risk than you're willing to take on as an organization, and some other quicker wins that might leverage existing platforms that you already have, that you already know how to use. So how do you guys think organizations should be balancing that and sort of approaching that build versus buy question in the context of ROI and AI? I'll open that one to the floor as well.
I can start with that one. Almost every application now is having AI as embedded within this solution because of all the hype that we've already spoken about. But I think what happens is, I mean, these tools are very good, they're very useful, but specific to that particular application. So in any sizable organization, typically the information is distributed, it's between multiple systems. That's when you're going to start running into those, built-in application specific capabilities is probably not going to address the use case. So it goes back to what the whole conversation has been earlier. Start with the use case. What's the business problem? If the business problem can be solved by what that, AI capability is within a particular application, great. And why not use it? But I think in most scenarios, most use cases span just one particular application. And that's when the organization is going to have to look at, okay, what do I have to do to bring these different data sources together, to integrate the data, to make sure it's usable, to have that context for the AI to be able to leverage. And that's when you start looking at a lot of the things that we were talking about already in the case of, okay, I'm going to have to build this custom application, so to speak. But really, a lot of the tools now are making it much easier. So it's not necessarily having to learn all these new things around vector databases and how to deal with different things around the LLM orchestration and that. You don't have to deal with that. These tools are also being simplified. So even the creating of these custom applications are straightforward and able to be done very quickly.
Yeah, I'll add on top of that. It's another one of those cases where you put on the product manager hat in a way. Yeah, with AI and implementation of AI, a lot of it goes back to listing out the requirements, understanding what exactly you're trying to build, because that's going to allow you to see precisely what you're trying to build. Where are your different catches, your traps, right? To get all the way down to production. You may start with an MVP to build it yourself, but then you realize actually for the full platform, actually data gravity is an important aspect because my data is somewhere else, and potentially where that data is where I want to build this. Or in other cases, maybe it's my expertise, right? Certain businesses have more of a right to build something for themselves because they're very niche. And they're going to build something that is very bespoke to their particular need and use case. So I think that, again, going to the basics, it's the trade-off, it's the requirements in order to get to the value that you've identified. And of course, when you come to realize what you want to build, it's also a spectrum. It's not very black and white. In some cases, you are building outright solutions that are solving the entire use cases. And in other cases, you have a platform on top of which you can build, right? And where you have components that you can build your particular use case from. And in other cases, it's the total opposite spectrum where you're building everything from scratch. So I really think that, again, it's quite a it depends kind of answer, but starting off with listing out the requirements, identifying what is important to you when you build it, and then the timeline of that will get you to a fairly good understanding of whether or not you build or you buy.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think one thing I want to add is I think businesses, at least in the age of AI, you need to have a lot of agility in this aspect, right? Like you might build something today and then realize there's something that's out there that maybe like Anthropic or OpenAI comes up with that's a lot better. In those cases, like you should be open to the idea of like discarding what you've built and like adopting an external tool that's a lot better, and you can achieve that with a lot less overhead and maintenance cost on your development teams, right? So I think having that agility is really key. I know one of our customers is a large professional services organization. They built their own internal like RAG chat application. And as they built and rolled it out, they realized that actually just using ChatGPT with custom knowledge sources was getting them a lot better results. And they ended up actually scrapping the entire application they built internally and adopting ChatGPT, right? Which long-term like put them in a better position, competitiveness wise, and also like just reduce their cost maintaining that internal application. Right. I think things are changing really quickly. There's a lot of new product capabilities being released, new startups doing some very interesting things. I think keeping yourself up to date and having an open mind and not falling into the sunk cost fallacy is really crucial.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, by the way. So I look at that in three. There are three views. One is do it yourself, leverage the platform, or go the independent solution provider route. Quickly to break it down. So the first one, do it yourself, is all about impact assessment. What's the opportunity cost? We talked about, do you have the right skills? And then it doesn't become an internal polit bureau where you need 10 people, 30 people, or 2,000 people to sign off on that initiative. And end of the day, you're taking the core emphasis away from the business to something that may be a niche, and like Shiva mentioned, may get thrown away at some point in time, right? That's the challenge with do it yourself. And then what we see in the data management world is most of our enterprise customers use Snowflake. They also use the other platforms like Databricks or BigQuery. So it becomes a multi-data platform world. So it's, and sometimes the platform providers are trying to be more horizontal, I guess, to some extent. But again, it's a challenging thing. So that's where the third avenue of having the independent software vendor comes in, where we can play with not only the Databricks or Snowflakes and BigQueries and AWSs of the world, and also we are model agnostic. My first recommendation here is, please do not build an LLM or a frontier model on your own unless you have deep pockets or you have billions of dollars to spend, like our colleague here from Snowflake, right? We decided against it. We support OpenAI, we support Gemini, we support Claude, right? So, and we're supporting other LLMs as well. The foundational LLMs are evolving at such a rapid pace, but again, they can't do what we do. Because we have our moat against what we do. So it's, again, I would do the impact assessment for do it yourself. Platform is, are you single platform, multi-platform, or the ISV route is what I think I would recommend. Not because I'm an ISV, but again, gives you the ability to scale across platforms.
Yeah, just to put a exclamation point on what you just said, Girish. It's like we don't know where things are going to go in the future. Right. And so what you want is, you want to be flexible, and you don't want to tie yourself to one particular implementation. So, you talked about the frontier models and the like. Of course, the LLMs need to be interchangeable for sure. But at the same time, it's like you can't put yourself into one sort of consumption boat either, and choose one's particular chatbot even. Because who knows where this stuff is going to go. When it comes to building agents, we're going to have headless agents going off and doing stuff with data without any human involved. But we just don't know. So make sure that your stack is flexible and agnostic, so that you can plug and play without having to reinvent the whole supply chain if you choose to switch technologies or introduce new technologies into the equation. Because we have no idea. So you should actually architect for having no idea where things are going to go. Just make sure you're flexible.
Yeah, great points all around. So getting back to some of our planned questions, we've had some great engagement from the audience, so keep the questions coming. But wanted to definitely ask you guys for some real world examples of what you've seen for enterprise AI applications that have delivered measurable ROI. There's been a lot of discussion lately about the MIT study that 95% of AI pilots don't produce ROI. There's some debate over maybe the methodology there, but certainly there's many pilots that have not produced ROI. And so what are some of the ones that you guys have seen that have been successful, and what do you think made them successful? Shiva, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, I did look at the MIT study too. I think the whole point of the pilot sometimes is to fail, right? So I don't think it's bad that some of these pilots fail, but maybe it is like why a large percent are failing. To speak to the other point, we had a customer, National Bank of Australia, right? They also had a lot of Gen AI initiatives, I think, and they were very successful in implementing them and driving like measurable business outcomes because they started with like a strong business data foundation. The first thing they did was to like first centralize all of their data into like one place, and then think about what are the applications they want to build on top of that data, right? So one of the use cases they started with was a support use case. They have a lot of customers coming to their bank's website asking questions about like different products that they sold, different like getting support for technical issues that they're facing. Right. So the first thing they did was to bring all of that knowledge from like various chat interactions or support interactions they've had over the years and consolidating that information into their warehouse. And then they've identified like several types of questions they could automate using AI and help respond to customers quickly. They also established like clear success metrics, right? They define how quickly things would get resolved, like in terms of support cases, how quickly like an agent could respond to a customer, as well as like NPS scores on their chat interactions. And once they had the success metrics, then they went ahead and built and implemented, as well as rolled out in like a very phased manner, which I think helped them control the risk of like bad responses or security issues coming up. And at the end of it, they did see like a 50% improvement in some of these key success measures that they identified, which helped them show value to their business stakeholders and then prepare for like a broader rollout of that initiative. Right. I think they did several things right, which is like, starting with the data foundation and then having clear business outcomes tied to that initiative that really helped them be successful.
Yeah, great example. Who wants to take that one next?
I can jump in. It's Gen AI has definitely skewed the interest level, and perhaps that's part of the reason why we're having this discussion also, right? So I look at the ROI from AI coming even from things like predictive AI, among others. The reason why I want to call attention is it's not always the big wins that are the headline grabbers, which CXOs and others want to talk about. There's often the mundane, real examples, right? So I talked earlier about knowing the performance of your queries. How are your like mundane things like, okay, whose queries? Not that you need to go do that today. You can if you want to. Which teams which team is writing the queries that are performing the poorest, right? There's no way to know that unless you spend hundreds of man months on that today. Now with Gen AI, it's not so much about the poor queries or the individual singling it out. It leads to the inefficiency in the system. Doesn't matter which cloud data platform you have today. Imagine you want to understand how are my queries performing across my warehouses? What are the consumption of the warehouses? What are the spikes happening today? These are the problems today that many of our customers can get through predictive AI, as well as with Gen AI, they can interact with the data faster, right? Because just to give an example, one of the larger customers of ours, they're saving about 25% plus on their data platform spend. Just because use of predictive AI, which says, okay, based on our analysis of your workloads, usage, and queries, these are the savings. And then in near real time, we can monitor them. And with Gen AI, you can interact with the data. These things were not possible before. Same thing goes with data quality and performance and observability today. And I'm enthused at how things are progressing, both from a technology, but again, more importantly, the adding value to the business. If someone is spending tens of millions of dollars on the data platform or investing in massive data quality teams, now we can optimize and have them do a lot more in a much shorter time. It's all about improving the effectiveness and efficiency of humans, as well as the underlying data ecosystems. And there are several examples I gave some of our customers at the beginning. It continues to happen almost in every aspect of data management and analytics.
And I'll jump in as well for some of these use cases. I've had the pleasure of working with many different enterprises, specifically from an unstructured data perspective. That is in itself a huge value opportunity. There's the motivation of something new. There's the motivation of solving something old, and so there are a lot of different conversations happening in the businesses of how do I now get to a single picture. If today inside of your data warehouse, we acknowledge the fact that it's only 20% of all of your customer interactions that you maintain, that means 80% is maintained elsewhere, in your emails, in your contracts, in your other physical interactions, and you want to bring them in somehow. And so some of the successes that we've seen is exactly in that territory, where the business starts looking inwards, identifying what are those opportunities that they can solve. And I generally like to split them into two separate categories. There's the core business that you can affect, and then there's the operational business, which you can improve. And I have examples of both. For the example of a core business, there's a financial company, New American Funding, that we worked with, who does mortgage lending applications. It's one of their core businesses. So they get a lot of different documents that come in. Previously, they used legacy systems as well as manual operations to extract information from those documents, to identify what is important to them, bring that into Snowflake, and be able to then downstream operate with those with that data. So alongside their existing structured data that they already have. And it only took them about a month. And the biggest value that they saw is that they took ownership. Previously, they worked through a vendor, and now they built themselves on top of the Snowflake platform to be able to own that data, bring that in, and actually be able to manage it, maintain it with any evolution in the original document. And whenever it comes to the model lifecycle management and or deployment, it's all managed. It's very easy, and they can change with all the evolutions. And after a month of testing, it was another month of implementation, and then they were in production. So that was an example of a core business use case. One that's on the operational side, I'll use actually an internal example. Here at Snowflake, I worked with our auditing team. So with our auditing team, every single month goes through a bunch of different order forms that come into Snowflake, and they review those order forms for any risks, anything that needs to be identified as non-standard to have additional observability. And so what we did was essentially find an agentic approach that allows for any order form to automatically be ingested and reviewed. Key extractions have already been identified, as well as the raw text itself, that then is given to an agent to be able to read through and identify anything non-standard. It then gets delivered back to the business, and then they can manage this through Snowflake Intelligence and some dashboards for them to maintain across. And what these things have in common, of course, is there was a value, there was something that was previously already existent, and they knew that it can be improved. And over time, once that implementation is set, you can see the value. Maybe the first day it is 20% automation, second day it's 50, and then day 30 you're already 100% automated. And those are the types of use cases that we see quite often go all the way down to production.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a Nikolai. It's like you made a point here that that it's existing applications or existing sort of processes that you're looking to improve, and that's a really good place to start, right? Because you already have something, you can already measure it against a baseline because you already know what it is.
It's always easier than to compare to something brand new, right? How do you
right
on something brand new?
But then there is the greenfield, and the greenfield is like it's much harder to obviously to measure ROI for a greenfield project, but it is something that's net new, definitely more exciting and more shiny. And so it's harder to prove ROI, and for our side of the business where it's all about analytical queries, I would just measure ROI by usage. And the more queries, the more people are using it, the more they're adopting whatever that new capability is. That would be a sign of providing value as a proxy. But it's a really good point that do you incrementally improve something, or not incrementally? Do you improve something that already exists, or do you go for the greenfield applications? So I don't know the answer to that, but
Yeah, I to that point, I would say, just because the example is about what do we see get that success more. And to be honest, after reading that MIT paper, that is exactly what I came away with it, because I've seen a lot of these things go all the way to production, and those that go to production, usually the easiest ones are the ones where you can prove that ROI, because you've already had something previously, and then you can go to your CFO and you say, this was the cost before, this is the cost now.
Good point.
Great points, everyone. And we're just about out of time, but we have room for one more question, our lightning round. Your key takeaway for executives who are seeking to maximize ROI from their AI investment. So just one phrase or a couple so we stay under time here. What is your key takeaway? Why don't we start with Kevin on that one?
I think the key thing is to think strategically, what's that infrastructure we need in place, all the different things we were talking about, but act incrementally. Start focusing on one business goal, one business problem. What can we do to improve that? Build it out, build it to those, defined measures of success and everything. Learn from it, iterate off of it, and then use those learnings for the next, the next initiative. I think as Nikolai was just saying, you're going to have certain level of automation when it first rolls out, but as the system learns and grows, it's going to be able to be more successful and more successful. But so just act small, don't necessarily try to boil the ocean, and that's going to be the best way to success quickly.
Excellent point. Nikolai?
No AI strategy without data strategy. So data, and start thinking about unstructured data. That's a big, big opportunity.
Absolutely. Dave?
Echo Nikolai, start with the data. And I would say you can't really do Gen AI without a semantic layer if you're doing analytics. So start with a good data foundation that you can trust before you start investing in the edges.
Sure. Girish?
Sure. I would say build a proper AI foundation, which includes data cost management with the right data and reliable data as your first AI investment. Because no AI, no matter how smart, no matter how many trillions, billions of tokens it can do, can give you positive ROI.
And Shiva will give you the last word.
Yeah, I think I echo everything else said already. I think treat this as a startup. If you were running it as a startup, what would you do? With limited resources and the pressure to prove value, I think if you do that, then your incentives get aligned and you will maximize what you get out of it.
Great point. And excellent discussion today. Very, very lively discussion and great activity from the chat as well. So thank you all for joining us today. If you missed any of the webinar or want to rewatch anything, this recording will be available just a few minutes after the webinar concludes. If you refresh this page, we'll also send out the recording on our YouTube channel tomorrow to everyone who is registered. So thank you again to all of our panelists, as well as to our partners at Snowflake, AtScale, Denodo, Fivetran, and Revify for making this conversation possible. And we'll see all of you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.